Up with KREM begins now.
Cooler temperatures return to the inland northwest. I'm going to walk you through just how cold we get in the days to come.
Now it's a big day in the Pacific Northwest. 41 years ago today, Mount St. Helens erupted. It happened around 8:30 a.m. on May 18th, 1980. The blast spewed tons of ash into the sky and across several states. Coming up in just a few minutes, we take a look at some of the destruction from 1980.
And this morning, we also want you to share your memories with us about that day of Mount St. Helens. You can text us 509-448-2000. You could also send us pictures in for the event. We've gotten a lot of responses this morning. One person said they were actually living in Dallas when it erupted, and my husband worked for a motorcycle dealership. Every evening when they rolled the bikes in, all of them had to be cleaned off with ash, lasted for several weeks. You know, someone was in high school, they were on their choir tour, so everyone kind of has their own memory of this huge event that happened. So please send in photos or memories. We, of course, love to hear where you were and what you were thinking.
I actually have a question for one of those viewers who sent it in. If you're still watching, the one who said they heard and felt the boom, I would like to know what they thought it was when that happened, because, you know, it wasn't something that necessarily everyone was ready for happening, and that's why it was so deadly. So it would be so curious to know, you know, what was going through their minds when it first happened.
Absolutely, and I know a lot of people in the Spokane area actually collected some of the ash, and we've done a lot of stories on different people who have collected different things from so many years ago.
Yeah, my house was built in the early 70s, and it's got a giant crawl space in the attic, and there is a thick layer of dust. And I went, this isn't regular dust, what is this? And I kept trying to figure it out. And then there was some stuff stacked and it was dated, and that dust in there is definitely ash. So it's kind of cool.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
All right, Jeremy's got to go home and take a picture now.
Yeah, like dated stacks. I was nerding out in my attic for way too long one day. So
all right,
kind of cool.
Let's get to weather though, Jeremy. We are experiencing a change today, that's for sure. You'll feel it when you walk out the door.
Oh boy, will you. It's a bit cooler early on this morning. As Brandon T. Jones put it, I think I'm going to stay in my car until I'm ready to come back on camera. It's not overly cold, but it does feel a lot colder out there. Temperatures hanging out right near 50 degrees, but you add in the wind. It's wind gusts up near 25 and even 30 miles per hour at times. And that 50 degrees has a bit of a bite this morning. And that is going to have a bite throughout the day today. Wind gusts from 25 to 30 miles per hour all day long. We are going to see that kind of taper off overnight tonight, but in the interim, just think of it this way. It's a mix of clouds and sun and that wind. As temperatures trend quite a bit cooler today, we are topping out in the low 60s here in Spokane, but I really do think we wind up seeing a bit of sun and then clouds, and then it's kind of that ebb and flow that takes us through the day today. Overnight, as we start to clear out and the wind dies down, that sets the stage for temps dropping. We could see some sensitive plants take a hit tonight just because of how cold we're going to get. And coming up in your full forecast, we'll walk you through tomorrow morning's cold weather.
Jeremy, thanks so much. DUI numbers are on the rise in Kootenai County. This is according to new data from the Sheriff's Office. Nicole Hernandez is joining us now this morning. Nicole, are we seeing this sort of thing in Eastern Washington?
Yeah, Tim, so Eastern Washington isn't showing the exact numbers that Kootenai County is, but Kootenai County is saying that they are seeing an uptick in the DUIs here in the county, and it's not just by a little bit. They're showing that it's a 25% increase in DUIs compared to this time last year. Now, this number was first reported by our partner, the Coeur d'Alene and Post Falls Press, but Kootenai County was able to confirm that they have had 76 DUI arrests through April of this year.
You can speculate that people are not working as much, and so they're out maybe partaking in the bars a little bit more than they have in the past.
Now, County Lieutenant Ryan Higgins says it could also be other factors like warmer weather, but what's not speculation is that deputies are being more proactive when it comes to stopping drunken driving this year. We reached out to Mark Gregory as well with the Spokane County Sheriff's Office, and he says there are no immediate signs of an uptick in Eastern Washington's DUIs so far this year. But he does say that the county is aware that drunken drivers are out on the roadways. something he says definitely needs to stop and stop now. A similar sentiment to Hagan's warning to potential drunk drivers across state lines.
I think the word needs to be out that we're actively looking for DUIs and that there's zero tolerance for DUIs and they'll be charged.
Now, data from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration shows DUI numbers back in 2019 were actually on the decline, but that was before the pandemic-stricken 2020 saw those numbers climb once again. Now, the average cost for a first-time DUI is anywhere between $5,000 and $15,000 in a fine, and that number just continues going up from there. But both Higgins and Gregory say that nothing justifies the potentially fatal mistake that could happen from drunken driving. Live in Coeur d'Alene, I'm Nicole Hernandez.
Nicole, thank you. Well, this morning we are looking back at a historic moment in the United States.
Yeah, on this day 41 years ago at 8:32 a.m., Washington became the center of the deadliest eruption in U.S. history. 57 people tragically lost their lives.
According to the U.S. Geological Survey, most of the people killed in the eruption likely died from inhaling hot ash. Destruction from the blast caused more than $1 billion in damage statewide. Now, the first sign of the eruption actually happened in March of 1980. A 4.2 magnitude earthquake caused snow avalanches on parts of the volcano.
And according to the USGS, between then and May 18th, there were more than 2,800 earthquakes recorded at the volcano. 41 years ago today, a 5.1 earthquake shook the mountain, causing a massive landslide and explosion.
Ash, rocks, and hot glass spewed into the air. Plumes shot as high as 15 miles into the sky. Winds traveling about 50 miles per hour carried ash to our area in the inland northwest, and the ash blanketed the Pacific Northwest and stretched to 11 states and even Canada, including right here in downtown Spokane. Several inches covered the streets. Take a look at the video by KREM 4 decades ago.
Yeah, similar to downtown today, there weren't a lot of crowds. People were covering their faces and trying to navigate the streets with little to no visibility.
Wow. Well, the days following the explosion, workers tried to wash away the ash from the streets and sidewalks, but the ash would stay put in some places for decades.
And then all of a sudden the sky started getting darker and darker, and by 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon it was completely dark here, as it was in Spokane and all over. And of course you had this ash falling, and I think people thought, well, tomorrow we'll get up and it'll melt, it'll go away. It was kind of like, snow. But of course, thank God the sun came up the next morning, and of course then you had this 5-6 inches of ash all over town. You'd walk in, it was kind of like an eerie feeling.
Wow, what a mess. Well, here's a look at what it was like to be behind the wheel driving through downtown. You might recognize parts of Main Street and other major intersections. And then take a look at this video from WSU. Wow, almost looks like a snow day there. It shows the university in Pullman covered in ash and students walking to class covering their faces. Cars kicking up several inches of ash in the streets, making it impossible to see the roads. Almost looks like live fresh powdered snow. President Jimmy Carter at the time visited Eastern Washington to see the devastation for himself.
Of course, east of the explosion was where most of the dust has settled. And this is a very troubling problem for us. In the area of Ritzville and about 40-mile radius around there was the heaviest concentration of this fallout material. It's 3 to 5 inches deep. Transportation is still obstructed in that area. And of course, here in Spokane, there was about a ½ inch of the material deposited on the ground.
Now, the Ritzville area had the most ash in eastern Washington. It's about 195 miles away from Mount St. Helens. There was 2 to 5 inches, almost twice as much as Yakima, which is only about half as far from the volcano, just because the ash went so high and then had to come all the way back down, so it takes a lot longer, Tim. And did you know that today Mount St. Helens is still active?
No way, I didn't know that. However, seismic activity around the volcano quieted after the mid-80s. According to the USGS, the area experienced the fewest earthquakes since the eruption ended in the early 2000s. On September 23, 2004, earthquake frequency increased and a new formation was reported on the southeast margin of the 1980-86 lava dome. By September 26th of 2004, scientists warned of an increased change of explosion from the dome.
Yeah, explosions began in October 1st, 2004, sending ash and gases into the air. 5 explosions in all occurred through October 5th of that year. 2 more significant explosions occurred in 2005. Mount St. Helens remains the most active volcano in the Cascade Range, and according to the USGS, of the volcanoes in the contiguous U.S., it is the most likely to erupt in the future and even in our lifetimes.
Whoa.
Yeah, Tim, this is absolutely crazy. Many people have wondered what an explosion from Mount St. Helens would look like today.
Yeah, when a volcano erupts explosively, it produces a large ash cloud, like what some of you might have seen during the 1980 explosion. According to the USGS, its size and travel distance are determined by the amount of material erupted and the height of the cloud, plus the wind direction and speeds, of course.
Yeah, take a look at this data from the USGS. Now, this is not an official forecast. The graphics show an expected amount of ash in the atmosphere should an eruption occur in similar size to what is indicated. This model is showing an explosion similar in size to the explosion that happened 40 years ago today.
And the warmer colors represent areas that would see large amounts of ash. The colder color means less ash. USGS scientists run this model to prepare for possible eruptions. All right, let's send things over to Dana Marie McNichol now with a look at memories people are sharing about the eruption. Good morning, Dana Marie.
Good morning, guys. Yeah, we've seen them come in as you were explaining and breaking down exactly what happened. That footage was amazing to see. One person said in Moses Lake we got 4 to 6 inches of that ash. In Coeur d'Alene we got a suntan in my front yard and also at a football game. Another person said they were pregnant with their daughter driving up to a part in Washington to see their grandparents when they heard and felt that boom. Someone else was in Bellingham. I thought it was a runaway train car getting hit by other cars. It was so loud. So like Jeremy was saying earlier, people didn't really exactly know what was happening until they saw that on the news. Another one said they were out in Airway Heights getting ready to watch the air show at Fairchild. And it was an extremely hairy ride back to Spokane. So again, you still have a ton of time to send in what your memory was, where you were, what you thought that loud boom was on Up with KREM this morning. 509-448-2000.
Wow. Pretty incredible. People really do remember that day. You know,
yes,
if you
so
lived
clearly
here, it was a day that they'll remember forever.
Oh, absolutely. And they say that was one of those noises that could be heard extremely far away. So it's likely some people who even lived here in Spokane might have heard the sound of that eruption this far away, which is absolutely incredible to think about.
Kind of scary though, too.
Oh my gosh, to think about it happening in today's, world with, gosh, we don't need another thing like that adding on to 2020. But yeah, I love that old footage. It's so interesting to see. Thanks, guys, for breaking it down.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have more on that coming up throughout the show. But for now, we got a lot to talk about in the world of weather. Notice the snow in the higher elevations? Well, that took a big hit with our warm weather the past few days. But now we're talking the potential for some of those higher elevations to see a little more snow in the coming days.